Out of the dozens of abandoned and deserted towns that I've seen crossing into the southwest of the U.S., I selected these 5 or 6 because they kind of represent the entire century and the changes that have been happening. If you like one particular town that I've highlighted, just let me know and I can do a deeper dive on it. An hour outside of Las Vegas, you have Good Springs. You know, a very, very old mining town. It's also going back 500-600 years with the Aboriginals in the area, natives. And it's also on what they call the old Spanish trade trail. I love this town. It's one of the best preserved mining towns that is still occupied, and also it has a place called the Pioneer Saloon. I'd go back again. It's also, I did a video on Clark Gable and his time at this place in the Pioneer Saloon. But also, it's gaining new notoriety because of the online gaming Fallout, and a lot of the locations there are used within the game. So great history in this town of Good Springs. You'll enjoy the ride. It's probably only about a half an hour off the main highway, and I mentioned it's only about an hour from Las Vegas going south and on my path. And after I leave Good Springs with you today, I'm going to head off to another smaller town on the route called Nipton. The Pioneer Saloon has really maintained its authenticity and also maintained the room where Clark Gable had gambled, and also it was kind of an honorarium for his time he spent there waiting for news on his wife, who died in a plane crash in the area. Now we're down into Nipton. Very small hamlet stop. And you'll find it's interesting because there's still maybe about 40, 50, maybe 100 people there. But it's right in this little junction as you're crossing the desert. But what's going to be interesting about this is that it's gone 2-3 owners, and it was just recently in the last 2 years bought by a conglomerate out of Las Vegas, an entertaining conglomerate. What they plan to do with it, no information, but it's got a small scattering of kind of, artists and people that just kind of like this kind of distant lifestyle. It really will be a blank canvas for this entertainment company, whatever plans they have in the coming years. So let's head over. Now we're going to head towards Vidal. A very old abandoned homestead mining carry, but it was famous for, you can check one of my other videos, where the last home of Wyatt Earp, who used to mine in the area, and this is in the earliest 20th century. Only his original kind of homestead that he and his wife lived in remains. The rest of the hamlet has been just left to the desert sun. Except for kind of a short takeover in the 60s by a cult called the Solar Lodge, who eventually got dislodged, arrested, and disbanded. But you can sense the history here, but there's been no plans that you can research. You'll find that there's going to be any development here. Just another town lost to the desert. In the boom of the 20s, it actually had recorded 28 liquor outlets in this small little hamlet. Hundreds of cars on this Route 95 passed this abandoned hamlet, not realizing the histories here, especially with the famous Wyatt Earp. It's worth the stop just to see where he spent his remaining years between here and Los Angeles while he worked in the movies in the mid-20s. Not far from Vidal, maybe a half an hour, on the Colorado Indian Reservation lies Pawson, largest Japanese-American internment camp of 18,000 during World War II. Very little exists anymore. On a remote desert highway, you've got the rice shoe fence. Since the early 2000s, thousands of people have been putting their shoes up here. Strange place, but better than the underwear. Now we hit the Desert Cafe in the desert center. Since 1915, this waste stop was doing extremely well until the 1930s, and then went into decline, so that by 2012 it completely shut down. But it still has an active post office box here, and a major company has picked this operation up. Research shows that after 2026, there's some massive plans for another major truck travel stop at this location. But in the meantime, the desert, like many other places, has really taken a toll on many of these small communities, and that's a theme that's going to run through many of my upcoming videos. So I stayed 3 days within this Shorako Summit, which is really a thriving community. Family had bought this in 1933, the Shorakos, and it became Patton's headquarters during World War II. This center, the Desert Training Center, covered 18,000 miles. And so the post office, the kind of the way station for truckers and drivers, has survived and grown. It's a great place to stop and stay on the way into California and Los Angeles. And it survived, and I believe it survived not because it's got a very busy highway, but it's got a great culture story behind it, the Patton Museum's there, but also because of family commitments. You know, families continue to run this since 1933, and it shows. One of my favorite places to stay. This location for me also became a kind of a staging area for me to go to the Salton Sea, which is only about an hour away to get down to California, which a whole new story in itself. Watch for my upcoming search for the lost Spanish galleon down by the Salton Sea, and also look for a little more in depth of the Salton Sea, the volcanoes that are in the area, and the earthquakes that are happening. So